Welcome to AXREM Insights, developing healthcare through medtech and innovation. Join Melanie Johnson and Sally Edgington as they talk with our industry leaders and experts.
Hello and welcome back to AXREM Insights. I'm Melanie Johnson and I'm here with Sally Edgington. Today we have the pleasure to be speaking to Samuel Jones, Regional Corporate Manager, and Freya Trevor Harris, Campaigns and Activism Manager, both from Action for Children. Action for Children are AXREM's nominated charity for 2025 as voted by the AXREM Executive Committee. Welcome Sam and Freya and thank you for being on the show today. Now let's get started by finding out a little bit more about you both. So Sam, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you very much for having us. So my name's Sam. I'm a regional manager at Action for Children. I've been working here for 5 years now, so in various roles, from community roles to now getting to work on our amazing corporate partnerships.
Super. And Freya, how about you?
Hi, I'm Freya and I'm our Campaigns and Activism Manager, and I sit in the influencing team, which is all about trying to influence positive change for children. I've been at Action for Children for coming up to 2 years, and previously before that I've worked in quite a few kind of children's and young people's charities. It's very much where my kind of passion and career aims lie.
Super. I was just about to ask actually, have you always been interested in charity work, and has that obviously always been your history within your employment? Obviously you have. What about you, Sam? Have you always worked within like the charity sector?
Yeah, so I started my career was in coaching in schools and in going around and doing community initiatives, using football as a positive way to engage young people. And then I started working in a school for children with autism and got into fundraising through that. And yeah, that's what's led me to Action for Children and the career that I've got now.
And I've got to ask you, what team do you support in terms of football?
Oh, it's been a tough year. I'm a Man United fan. So
yeah, I feel your pain. Same here. I feel your pain. So we'll move on now, and it would be great to find out more about Action for Children. What are your main missions and goals? And yeah, tell us more about Action for Children, please.
Yeah, we've got an incredible history. We were founded back in 1869, so over 155 years ago. There was a Methodist minister called Thomas Bowen Stevenson who saw lots of really heartbreaking situations of homeless children around the London area. 2 children that he saw living underneath the arches of Waterloo Station were Fred and George. And he sort of really knew that he had to do something to help those children, but he didn't know what to do. So the first thing that he decided to do was to go and speak to those children and just ask them directly what they wanted. From that, he came up with an action plan, and that was to create children's homes to support them, and that's how the National Children's Home, as it was called back then, was born. Over the years, we've progressed and we've listened to what those children need and really tailored our approach to that. And that's sort of why we've changed our name in recent years to Action for Children, to really highlight that. There's definitely a lot more sort of complex needs and complex challenges that we're facing in today's world. But we still use those principles that Stevenson created really to help shape our principles and our mission today. I'm sure Freya can expand on how we do that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously a huge way that we kind of are taking action for children is that we have over 400 services in communities across every one of the 4 nations of the UK. And so we're kind of in communities, we work with children, we work with families, we work with young people, helping them through kind of challenges and supporting them. We also work on a wider scale, and that's what work I do in the influencing team. So what we do is look at what challenges are facing children and young people that we could kind of help. Where could we make an impact? And what we do is we do research to kind of find out the details of those challenges and also come up with some recommendations about what we usually think its government could do to improve that. And then we work really closely with MPs and ministers and government departments to try and make those things come to reality. And then a big part of what I do, so I'm particularly a campaigner, and my job is to make sure that the kind of general public are able to understand more about the issues that we're campaigning on, get involved, have a voice, and they can join us in kind of putting that pressure on government, on individual ministers or on their own MPs, asking them to take action, asking them to kind of get involved. So it's a really exciting bit of the kind of the influencing that I get to be involved in, which is how do we explain sometimes some quite niche areas of policy to the average person who really cares about children and they want to make a difference. You know, how do I help them understand what it is that we want and why we want to achieve it? So that's what I'm working on, and I can expand a little bit more on what some of those topics are, if that's helpful.
Yeah, I was just about to say, can you give some examples of the work that obviously your charity does, and what's been your most successful programme and activity?
Fab. Okay, I'll go from the top here. So basically, we currently work on 4 key areas in terms of our influencing work, and that's our policy, public affairs and campaigning work. One of the big ones we work on is child poverty. So there we're kind of asking the government to tackle child poverty, which has really risen over the last few years. And we're asking for major investment and reform to social security, just so that families can afford the things that they need. And there's also a lot of barriers parents face to getting into meaningful work, things like the cost of childcare, disabled parents not being able to get to accessible work. So we're also looking at tackling those barriers to work as well. We know that it can be easy to say, oh, if you're struggling, you should get into work. Work is the answer. But we know that's not the case, actually. For a lot of families, they need more than just being told work is the answer, get into work. As well as child poverty, we do a lot of work on early help, and that reflects a big service area that we work on. So we do a lot of help and support for families. And that can be everything from a family hub, which has universal help. So any family can turn up with a 3-year-old to a kind of stay and play session and get a bit of support there, all the way to quite targeted support like domestic abuse support and counselling for families who need that extra level of support. And what we're campaigning on there is basically the fact that there's been a real loss of investment in those services over the last few years. And that's led to more and more children going into care, and a huge amount of money that councils are spending on supporting children in care and supporting people at the very end. They've already reached crisis point, and we're trying to say that support needs to be there for children and their families way before they reach crisis point, so they can get that help they need and they can stay together and they can be a happy family together. The third area we work on is children in care. So that's about making sure that every child in the care system has a safe and loving home. There's enough good quality homes for them, and that when children grow up and they move out of care, that they give them the best support to get the best start into adulthood they can. And then the final area of work, which is quite a new one in terms of our influencing and policy work, which we've been leading on over the last couple of years, and we recently did a piece of work called the J Review, and that's around the criminal exploitation of children, which is something that not a lot of people necessarily know a lot about, but unfortunately is a real rising issue in the UK, where criminal groups or individuals are effectively using children to do their work, and they kind of coerce and manipulate children, and often there's a huge threat of kind of violence and intimidation. It's a form of child abuse. And so we've been kind of doing quite a lot of work to raise the profile of this, and we have some quite kind of promising legislative changes as well that I can talk a little bit about in terms of our impact. Yeah. But one of the really best examples I've got of how we've been able to influence change was around the Domestic Abuse Act in 2021. So before that, children were not considered themselves to be victims of domestic abuse, just witnesses. So a child growing up in a house where domestic abuse was going on wasn't seen themselves to be a victim. And that meant that it was quite hard then to get kind of funding for support services for children, and for them to be kind of to get that recognition, but also to get that help that they need to kind of recover from that and rebuild their lives, kind of if they've managed to leave domestic abuse behind. And that's something we see through our services. We have quite a few services that support children who've been victims of domestic abuse, and we see the impact that it has on them. So back in 2019 to 2020, we came together with other children's charities and also with the violence against women sector. And we really urged the government to better consider the needs of children who are affected by domestic violence. And then that was actually recognised in the Act in 2021. So we changed the law, we put that in the law, working really closely together with our friends at other charities to make sure that children were recognised. And we've been quite influential in quite a few other legal changes over the years. For example, getting emotional abuse to be considered as a form of child abuse, and kind of things like that, which sound quite technical but actually have quite a big impact then on the support that children have been through really big challenges are able to get. And so the next kind of opportunity that we're looking at is, at the moment, we're working really closely on the children's wellbeing in schools bill that the government have just put through, and we've actually already had one win on that one, which sounds quite techie, but it's a nerdy thing that we're proud of, which is that they're introducing a unique child identifier, which is basically like an NHS number, which will really help services to safeguard children together. So that's one win that we've already got so far, and we're working quite hard to see what other ways that we can strengthen the bill and make it as strong as possible to support children in care, but also other children who might need safeguarding and support. And we've also
can I just ask a question around that?
Yeah, of course, sorry.
Basically, so if a child, if you like, has got a unique identifier, so a number or whatnot, does that mean that actually follows them around? So if they're a victim in another area of their life or whatever it might be, that there's a record? Is that just so?
Yeah, so that's the idea. Sorry, I wasn't very clear. So the idea is, so maybe if a school have some safeguarding concerns about a child, and they're also their GP does, and then also maybe a nursery for another child, have picked it up as well, it can sometimes be hard for them to kind of compare notes and come together and kind of build that full picture, because you might only see kind of small things, but actually if you pull them together by working together, you can get a full picture and think, oh, actually something's going on for this child. They're not particularly safe. They need a bit of support or help. And so that's the aim of the unique child identifier number, is that it will make it easier, because obviously children can have the same birthdays, or they can have the same names. So sometimes it can be harder to kind of keep that record. And it's also quite odd if you think about it. So at the moment, there's a lot of children who aren't in school. And that's partly because by kind of COVID and other challenges, which means a lot more children are being homeschooled, which can be a positive choice for families, but it also can leave some children more vulnerable because they're not being seen by schools. And at the moment, we don't know how many children that is, because there's not actually a record for who's out there. So what you have to do is almost compare the GP surgery notes of how many children in that area to the school notes of how many children in that area, and that's quite easy for people to fall through the gaps. So the kind of hope is, with this kind of unique identifier, that it will be easier to work out kind of where children might be, and kind of to compare notes on some of the challenges that child might be facing, and particularly kind of risks that there might be seen by professionals.
Yeah, and we've seen in the media with really high profile cases where agencies haven't communicated with each other. So hopefully this will really help and help protect children even more so. So I think that sounds like a brilliant bill. And I really hope that it achieves what you guys have set out to.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always a continual kind of process. There's always changes being made, and hopefully working together to make sure that children can stay with their families and be kept safe with their families as much as possible. And where children can't be kept safe at home, they're able to be supported in care in the best way, in a way that supports them to recover from any trauma they've been through, that makes them feel loved and supported, so they have a place they feel at home, and they can kind of grow into adulthood and have that kind of best opportunity. That's what we work for in the services that we provide for children in care, but also in the services we provide to families who just need a bit of help and support as well. And there's just one more thing I was going to talk about, which is we've got this crime and policing bill coming up. And that's going to introduce a new offence of criminally exploiting a child. So that's what I was talking about earlier in terms of kind of gangs and criminal groups often using children to do their work. So we called for that to be a new offence last year in our J review, and now the government are bringing that into legislation this year. So that's a really great kind of turnaround for us. And as part of that work, we've also seen the Home Office describing criminal exploitation as a form of child abuse for the first time, which is something that we and our partners were very clear about as well. So that's another really big step forward for us. And these might be children who are easily kind of stereotyped or dismissed. They might not be the children that come to mind when you think about vulnerable children who need support, but actually these children who are being exploited by gangs are some of the most vulnerable in our society and facing like really serious levels of harm. So anything we can do to protect these children from exploitation or help them afterwards to be treated as victims rather than as criminals themselves, it is a huge step forward.
Oh my God, right. Amazing. So I've seen statistics around that, and the numbers are much higher than what anyone could imagine. So it's great that you're working on that. So again, thank you for that.
No problem. It's one that not as many people have heard of, so I think it's quite interesting to talk about the kind of real scope of our work. We work with babies and we work with teenagers and we work with people facing all kinds of different challenges.
It all sounds absolutely amazing. And using my own personal experience, I have been the victim of domestic abuse myself, and as a result ended up as a single parent. And I remember when I was a single parent, when I went back to work, I was actually worse off for working than I was for being in the state system, if you like. But I always looked at the bigger and long-term picture of knowing going back to work was always going to be the right thing to do, and I certainly wouldn't be in the position I am today if I hadn't have worked whilst I'd got my young children children as a single parent. So I absolutely understand the work that you do and the importance of that work. I was very fortunate. I had a very supportive friends and family network that were able to support me, so I didn't end up in a crisis point and needing the help of a charity like Action for Children. But absolutely, that work is really, really vital. And like I say, I've kind of got that personal experience as well. So even more so, it kind of touches a nerve with me, if you like, and I can see that, this is an important charity for AXREM to support. So I think in terms of the funding, it's really good for us to understand, where does most of your funding come from, and what opportunities are there for listeners and AXREM members to get involved this year?
Yeah, so our funding comes from a range of activities. We've got services where we've got partnerships that we run in partnership with local authorities, so we get funding to deliver those vital services. That could be a short break service, which offers a break for children with disabilities and their families to attend. But then we also work with really important corporate partnerships like the one we're working on with AXREM. So we require over £17.5 million of fundraised money to give our children the opportunities they deserve. And this, like I say, comes from a range of things: community activities, so where people can host their own events within their community. It could come from sports events, and it could also come from these amazing corporate partnerships. So yeah, we find these are just really, really great ways to engage communities, and it provides all the extra funds that the children need to get successful outcomes.
Fantastic. And certainly from my perspective, I want to exceed what we raised last year. So in my head, I want to raise a minimum of £5,000 this year. And the way that we're going to be doing that is we have our AXREM Happy Hour event, which will be our biggest industry event in Liverpool in June. So we'll be doing a collection there. We have our chairman and vice chairman that get quite competitive in collecting money. So last year they collected nearly £700 in an hour. So we're hoping to exceed that. So anyone that's attending our event at UKIO for Happy Hour, please do come with your pockets filled of change. You can put them into the buckets, or there'll be QR codes to our fundraising page. We've also got our Future Leaders Council member Evie Eccles from Blackford, who will be doing a sponsored swim, and she's actually going to be swimming across some lochs in Scotland. She does outdoor swimming. That sounds very chilly to me, but I take my hat off to Evie. And again, people can donate on our fundraising page, and when we post this podcast, we will put a link to the fundraising page. And then our biggest part of our fundraising, and we're hoping to create an annual event that we can use for each of our charities of the year, is on Thursday the 4th of September. We are setting up a Million Steps challenge, where we're going to be asking AXREM members to enter the Million Steps challenge and walk as many steps in one day as possible, so collectively we can walk 1,000,000 steps. We will also be having a organised walk that day in the Cotswolds with a picnic, so any members that want to join us for that challenge can meet us in the Cotswolds, and obviously we'll be sending out more details nearer to the event. But we're really looking forward to hosting those events. I know I've been working quite closely with you, Sam, on those events to see how we can develop them and how we can make it as competitive as possible between member companies and within each of the member companies as well. So we're looking for some stars that are going to walk lots of steps on the 4th of September.
Oh, we're so excited, and it's it's a really fun way to get involved, and it's a great way to get to know other people from different companies as well, and also have that bit of competition, like you say. But it's a great and fun way to raise some funds and make a really important difference.
Thank you. Just going back, obviously, to the conversation you mentioned a minute ago around the activities for children. Are you able to expand on that a little bit more? Kind of what can they get involved in within the community? What is going on within their communities? What they can get involved in? And how do they find out about it as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And we've got, so one of the funds that I'm really sort of proud to be working on is our enrichment fund. So that gives children the opportunities that they might not have had. So for example, children that may have lived in care may have had multiple placements and moved around, and not really being able to have opportunities to make stable friendships and do the things that every child deserves to do and can enjoy. So it could fund days out to the theatre or into shopping centres, and just to really engage as every child would with their friends, and to make those connections with their community as well. Or for disabled children living with disabilities, that it could be providing them access to days out that they may not usually be able to access, and it just gives them all the opportunities that every other child gets as well.
I think it's really important, Sam. So we have this family fund. So it's where we are able to give this funding to families who come through our services. So families who might either meet in our family centres or might be living in one of our children's homes, or we can meet our families in those different ways. And part of that money is the crisis fund. So that helps families who are in poverty, who are struggling with hardship. They might not have a fridge, so they're not able to keep food for their family. Their oven might have broken. They're struggling to get the money together to fix it. They might have moved into a council flat with no carpets, which lots of the case is the case for council flats, and they're living on bare concrete with their babies. So our crisis fund can really help families facing those kind of situations of hardship. But I think it's really important that we have this enrichment fund as well, because every child deserves not just to not live in poverty and have food and have a warm house, but to go to the cinema and to go to a theme park and to have all these experiences. And I've been working on our most recent upcoming poverty campaign, which is called Paying the Price, which is coming out soon. But we hear kind of families where they've had access to the enrichment fund, they've gone out for the day, and the child said to the mum at the end of the day, well, how did we afford that? Please tell me that someone that they can't believe that they were given that support to get that, and they know how much stress that family's under, and they are aware that that's something they wouldn't normally be able to afford. And I think when we talk about poverty, we often presume it's something that children almost are oblivious of, and we know that parents make huge sacrifices to keep their children from maybe knowing the severity of the circumstances. But actually, I think children kind of are aware of these things, and it puts a lot of stress on them. And I think the fact that we're investing in children having fun and getting to do things they love, and getting a sports kit so they can join the local, join the football team and not be left out, is just as important as being able to fund those kind of more crisis elements as well. So I think it's something that we should be really proud of, and something that I'm really trying to talk about as part of our Paying the Price campaign, and when I'm speaking to young people as well.
Absolutely. And they're things that a lot of families take for granted, and so I think being able to offer all children that, and there's a lot of peer pressure these days, especially with social media and other things. So some children that do live in poverty would wonder why their friends are out doing cinema trips or whatever it is, and they're not able to. So actually for them to be seen the same as all their friends is absolutely key and important these days especially.
I think we also hear that particularly, or I've heard anecdotally a few times, is we've got families who've got maybe children with additional needs, and they're not able to understand why they're not able to do the stuff that everyone else is, and they might end up having tensions with their family. They say, but I want to go and do this thing I used to do that I really love. Why can't we go swimming anymore? Why can't we go to the cinema? And maybe have less ability to understand the situation that they're in, which I think it can be really difficult for parents. They're absolutely trying to do their best. Often these parents are struggling to work full time because they're supporting their children with additional needs. They can't give their child every single thing the child wants and they want to give them, and that's really, really tough for parents to be in that situation. And that's that's why we're there for families who either come to our short breaks, like Sam was talking to, where the families can get some respite support and children can get access to great fun opportunities they might not have had otherwise. But also kind of in our other family support services, where we might just do parenting courses or other places where we're able to support families and give them that help and give them that confidence to kind of get through challenging situations.
Gosh, amazing work.
And I think one of our roles with you guys being our charity of the year is to help raise the visibility and profile amongst our membership. Obviously, we've got over 75 companies in membership, and we want to make sure that we're really spreading the word about Action for Children. So you mentioned you're going to be having a new campaign around paying the price. Please do, leverage your, AXREM, and we will share that amongst our social media and our newsletters, etc., so we can help spread the word as well.
That would be great. And that's something we're always really keen to talk to people about. Is we love it when people fundraise, but if you're fundraising and you're really enjoying it, there are so many other ways that you can get involved as well. We always have live campaign actions, so people can sign petitions or kind of join in the campaign in kind of quite simple ways by signing up to hear more. Or we often ask people to email their local MP or email a minister, or kind of get involved in other kind of letter writing type campaigns where you can help us apply that kind of political pressure that we do need for the government to kind of take our concerns seriously and take the concerns of the public seriously. They've got so many priorities at all times, and it's really helpful if we can raise the profile and say people really care about child poverty and they really want their local MP and the government to do something about it. So yeah, any of our corporate partners who are willing to get involved in that stuff as well, it's always fantastic to hear.
Super, thank you. Amazing work, and thank you obviously for all that you're doing. As a parent, obviously you want to give the best to your children, and it's great that you're there obviously to support them. So as I say, thank you very much for that. So I'm going to have a slight change now on conversation. So over to my quirky question. So if you had a time machine, would you choose to go back in the past or to the future, and why?
Oh, tough one. I think going back to the start, Sally, I'd go back to the 90s when Man United were good. Definitely make
I'm coming with you.
And then, but I think, it's such a tough one, isn't it? I'd love, from a work point of view, I'd love to go back and just see where we were in those early stages and how we built such an incredible charity. But then on the flip side, so I'm sort of stealing both answers. It's here. I would also love to go forward and see the work that we're doing now, what difference it will make going forward, how the lives of the children that we're working directly with will be changed. And I just find that really, really inspiring and really motivating as well. Freya, what about you?
I think I'm a big nerd, so there's definitely a big part of me that would love to see more of history, and I love learning where things have come from and finding out about the history of things. But yeah, I think I agree. I kind of feel like it would be good to know what happens in the future, but I'm also kind of terrified. And I think sometimes when you're campaigning, there's a sense that, well, things are always going to get better. We're always moving towards a fairer, better, more decent society. And I think maybe some recent political events make us realise that isn't definitely going to happen. Things can move forward and then move back. And so I think I'd love to see the future where some of the things that we're asking for and we're calling for are happening, and we are seeing a society that works for all children, and where children are really valued and prioritised, and where children from all different backgrounds have an equal start. I'd love to see that, and I hope that is the way that society is moving. But I think you do need to fight for that, and you need to keep fighting for that. And I feel really proud that as part of Action for Children as a whole, and the amazing work we do, and then also as part of the kind of campaigning side, I'm really glad to be a part of that. And it sometimes calms my anxiety when I'm thinking, oh gosh, things aren't going well, how can we make things better? I think, well, at least that's what I'm spending my time doing, trying to make things better and trying to get a better future for our next generation.
And I agree with you guys, that's such a hard one to answer, because you can learn from the past, but I'm someone that's always looking to the future. So I'm always trying to be 10 steps ahead, what is on the horizon and what can we do to leverage, what the information that we know from the future. But yeah, like you say, it is quite a tricky question. I'd like to thank you both very much for joining us on our podcast today. We've learned a lot more about Sam and Freya, and most importantly, we've learned a lot about Action for Children.
Thank you very much. And can I just end by also highlighting as well, thank you, Sally, previously sort of sharing your experiences and being really brave and open about that. And I think it just highlights how these challenges can affect anyone. And we've got a service called Parent Talk that we're really proud of, and that offers free, down-to-earth advice for parents. It's just found on if you Google Parent Talk, it will come up, and on there'll be articles with the most common parenting questions written by our experts and our parenting coaches. And if it isn't on there, there's also a free one-to-one live chat as well, which again is with a qualified parenting coach, and you can talk to them really openly about anything that's worrying you or any questions that you'll have, and you'll get that judgment-free advice and emotional support that you need. So it's a really incredible free service that's open to everyone and anyone. So I always sort of encourage people to make best use of that as well.
Absolutely. And as someone that's been there and, nearly 15 years ago myself, I wish I knew about resources like that could have kind of helped me and given me help, advice and support. So I would urge anybody that is in a time of need, please do leverage the support services that are out there. And the Parent Talk sounds like a really great one. A big thank you to both Sam and Freya for joining us today, and thank you to all of our listeners.
Join Sally and I again soon when we will be speaking to AXREM members about our special focus groups and the work we do. If you have enjoyed today's podcast, don't forget to hit subscribe or feel free to share the podcast with friends.